Let's move to this story. An entire city could be turned into a 20-mile-an-hour zone under Labour plans which are set to pave the way for making it easier for every council to cut speed limits. This is Birmingham, the next target of restrictions, as its council has asked for permission to erect signs at the city boundary so the entire area can be classed as 20 miles per hour. Let's speak to Adrian Berendt, who's director of 20's Plenty for Us, a not-for-profit organisation campaigning for a speed limit of 20 on streets where people and motor vehicles mix. Good afternoon to you, Adrian.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. Listen, I'll say at the outset, I'm a big defender of the 30. You're a big defender of the 20. But we can leave this conversation as friends. I'm sure we can. Where has it come from, this obsession almost with the 20 mile an hour? Everything was going fine with 30.
Well, 50% of all casualties are on 30 mile an hour roads. You know, that's like, 13,000 people a year are killed or seriously injured on 30 mile an hour roads. That's it.
That doesn't mean to say that we won't have the same stat, but on 20 mile an hour roads.
We won't have the same stat on 20 mile an hour roads, that's right.
But we could have the same stat, is what I'm saying. We could have exactly the same, because people who are injured on 30 mile an hour zones are not always injured by somebody doing 30. It's somebody doing 40 or 50.
Well, the evidence from Wales is that 29% fewer casualties on 30 mile an hour roads when the speed limit's reduced from 30 to 20.
One of the problems that I see with, again, we can talk about statistics all day long, Adrian, is that, I heard somebody recently say, there's been no accidents on this particular road since they reduced it to 20, and then somebody also made the point following that there were no accidents before they reduced it to 20. So that game can be played all the time. That's about bad drivers, isn't it? Not about an inappropriate speed limit, which has been there forever.
It's not about statistics, Ian. It's about people's lives.
But if you take that to its natural conclusion, you'd just make it 10 miles an hour, wouldn't you?
No, because all the evidence is that the sweet spot for speeds within cities, village centres and towns is about 20 miles an hour. Below that, you don't get much greater benefit from reducing the speed further. 20 miles an hour is about the right speed limit. That's what all the experts say. That's what all the evidence is.
So does it? And again, I know there are certainly in Wales where they did have to have a rethink, didn't they? Where from this sort of blanket rollout to actually we might have got this wrong.
No. Well, first of all, it wasn't a blanket. Secondly, the national default speed limit is staying at 20. What the Welsh Government has done is to emphasise to local authorities that they can make exceptions where the needs of vulnerable road users are already spoken for.
I think most people do support the idea that, if you're, let's be honest, if you're driving in a big city, whether you're in London, I was in Liverpool at the weekend, going from Lime Street Station through the city, and it was a Friday night, it was bumper to bumper. Nobody was doing anything like 20, nobody was even doing anything like 10, so within a big city, most people, I think, understand that it makes sense, or even if it was not enshrined in law, you're hardly doing over that speed anyway. So, and outside schools and places where there is clear disproportionate representation of pedestrians, I think we all get that. But I suppose where the argument starts to fall apart a bit in terms of support is when it becomes blanket, that actually, let's just do this everywhere.
So could you tell me where it's been done as a blanket?
But that is the argument, isn't it? That if these proposals are going through and we see it put into roads that really don't need it. I mentioned Wales. Wales was more or less a blanket. Come on, they spent gazillion pounds on signs. They're now having to redraw because they're all inaccurate.
Well, OK, so they spent £32 million on... That's a
lot of money.
It's £10 per person in Wales, and they have saved, in the first 6 months alone, £46 million. It's paid for itself already in 6 months.
How has it paid for itself?
Sorry?
In what form did that savings take? Sorry, I didn't quite understand.
10 fewer people have died, and 489 people, including those deaths, fewer people have been involved in collisions.
As a result of that. So the money saved would not be to the taxpayer, to the...
Oh, yes.
The overall cost you're looking at. I'm not decrying the numbers, by the way, but that would be if you added together every component of a crash equation, from insurance to buying a new car.
No, it's the cost to the state of those lives lost and those casualties, lost work, strain on the NHS, ambulance calls out, all those sorts of things.
But if next year one more person than this year lost their life, what does that tell us about the stats? That they're not working?
I don't follow the argument.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is that I think statistics are always a little tricky in these areas. We might have next year 2 more people, sadly, who lose their lives in those 20-mile-an-hour zones than this year. So what do we extrapolate from an increase?
We might have more. Numbers of killed tend to fluctuate on individual roads because they happen in different places, of course.
Well, that was rather my point.
But if you look at the trend in Wales, since 20 miles an hour has been introduced, there has been a 29% reduction in casualties on 20 and 30 mile an hour roads. That same reduction was not seen in England, and it was not seen on 40 mile an hour plus roads. So it's not proof. I completely accept it's not proof. We might see statistics next year different, but we've now had 9 months worth of statistics in Wales. It looks pretty convincing for me. And that's part of the reason why the Welsh LGA, the Local Government Association in Wales, has just won the CIHT award for road safety.
Yeah.
And the Welsh Government is up for an award with the Prince Michael Award as well.
Well, we will watch with interest, of course, and as I think you allude to there, Adrian, over the next few years, perhaps that body of evidence will take us one way or the other. But, I hope it is the encouraging news that we want to see. Adrian, thank you for your time. Adrian Berendt, who's the director of 20's Plenty for Us, which is the non-profit organisation campaigning for a speed limit of 20 on streets where people and motor vehicles mix.